Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Grow Through It podcast. My name is Julia, and today we are talking about the truth about calories. If you've listened to my episodes before, you'll know my history with eating and nutrition and body image. I used to really only care about losing weight, and I didn't care how I did it. That was until I educated myself on what it truly means to be healthy. Before I learned this, I would see foods in the grocery store that were labeled as healthy or low fat or low sugar or no sugar, and I would assume that those foods were healthy. I've mentioned this before, but recently I've been seeing a lot of TikToks about recipes for weight loss, and they use Jell-O packets or Cool Whip, or just things that are labeled as no sugar or low sugar, and they are deemed as healthy. But as I said in that podcast episode, those foods are filled with chemicals and additives, and they're not actually healthy. They might be low calorie, but that doesn't mean that they're healthy foods. Some foods that we've been told are healthy actually don't make us feel good at all. Calories are also not created equally. Just because two things have the same amount of calories doesn't mean that they're going to do the same thing for your body. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Let's first dive into why healthy labels can be misleading. I actually learned this when I went to school for nutrition about how marketing shapes what we think is healthy. So companies purposely put things like low fat, low sugar, high protein on their labels to trick you into thinking that that is actually what's going on. Even things that say natural or organic can be misleading. And I've fallen for it many times too. I've seen labels that say high protein or organic or natural, and I'm instantly drawn to it. But when you actually look at the ingredients, you realize that it's not quite as natural as you think it would be. You have to look at the nutrition quality, not just what the label says. We learned in school that companies can actually get away with a lot when it comes to what they put on their labels. And just because something is sold as healthy doesn't mean it supports your body. It's always really important to look at the ingredients of the food. Now, when you're looking at the ingredients, always remember that the ingredients are listed in the order of most to least. So the first ingredient on the list has the highest content in that food. So typically, the first ingredient on many foods is sugar. It might not always be labeled as sugar. Sugar has many different names it can be called. But I've seen so many packaged foods that have sugar as their first ingredient. It's also important to look at the type of ingredients in those foods. So are they things you can pronounce, things that you know what they are? And is the list the entirety of the box, or is it just a couple of ingredients? So those things are really important to look at when you're looking at food labels. Also, if something is labeled as low fat, they might increase the sugar instead. Typically, if something is labeled as healthy and it's really low calorie, they have added something else in there that's probably not the best for you. There's also a lot of foods out there that are labeled as healthy, but it can be really misleading. So the first one is granola. And granola can be really healthy if you eat it in moderation, but typically granola is really high in calories and sugar. So if you're just having a sprinkle of granola, that's fine. But I think it's important to be aware that there is a lot of sugar typically in granola and other ingredients that really don't need to be in there. And it's usually really high in calories. So take a look at the ingredients inside the granola that you use or that you're thinking about buying, and make sure there's no extra things that don't need to be in there. It's also really easy to overeat granola. Protein bars are another example. They are often just candy bars in disguise. A lot of them have a lot of extra sugar. They have additives and chemicals that should never be in food. And most of the time, the macros on them aren't very good. A lot of them are really high in calorie, but not that high in protein. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of protein bar brands out there that do a really good job at balancing the macros. I personally really like the Built Puff protein bars, but again, you have to read the ingredients and look at the nutrition label to make sure that it's not just a candy bar with some extra protein in it. Flavored yogurt is another example. If you are getting Greek yogurt that is high in protein, Greek yogurt is a great source of protein if you can eat dairy, but a lot of the flavored yogurts are really high in sugar and they're not very filling. So Greek yogurt is a much better option than just like regular flavored yogurt. And then you can add things into your yogurt to make it taste a little better. I know sometimes like plain Greek yogurt isn't the best. There are some yogurt brands that flavor their yogurt naturally or use fruit, and that's great. Again, look at the labels because there's a lot of misleading brands out there of these types of foods. So it's really important to remember that health isn't determined by the labels of these foods. It's determined by how nutrient dense the food is and how it affects your body. So next, let's talk about why calories alone don't determine health. I'm sure you guys have seen before pictures of examples of foods of, say, like 200 calories worth of fast food versus 200 calories of healthy food. And the difference is quite drastic. But this is actually really important to remember because those images are right. 200 calories of fast food, that might get you like a large fry versus 200 calories of a balanced meal with chicken, rice, and vegetables. Those two things are very different and they're going to affect your body very differently. So lots of those low calorie packaged foods might make you feel good because you're eating things that taste really good and feel like you're eating bad food, but they're low calorie, but they don't fill you up. And then you end up craving other food because you're not satisfied. Your blood sugar will also react differently to these types of foods. So if you're eating a lot of ultra processed foods, your body is not going to react the same as if it were whole foods. So it's going to affect your blood sugar, your hormones, your digestion. It's going to affect your skin, your mood, everything. So while you may be counting calories and eating in a calorie deficit, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're eating the right foods to fuel your body. Another thing is liquid calories versus whole foods. So I love a good smoothie every now and then, but smoothies to me don't fill me up. If I am drinking my calories, I don't feel full or satisfied. And then I just want to eat more because I'm not satisfied or full. Liquid calories also digest faster. So eating whole foods will actually be more beneficial to you. Not to mention, if you're consuming a lot of your calories in liquid form, whether that's a smoothie, coffee, pop, energy drinks, whatever it is, those add so many calories to your day. I think that's what gets a lot of people is the liquid calories that they're consuming. Calories are just energy, so you want to focus on getting the right type of energy. I've heard this analogy before about filling up your gas tank in your car. And if your car takes regular gas, you're not going to put diesel in it. It's similar with your body. You want to make sure that you're fueling your body with the correct type of energy. Now, obviously, you don't have to eat that way 100% of the time. I love a good sweet treat every now and then. I love smoothies and ice cream and prepackaged foods sometimes, but it's important that you don't eat that way all the time. And I've seen this so many times with people I know where they are eating in a calorie deficit and want to lose weight. So they buy all of those prepackaged foods like the Jell-O mixes and the Cool Whip and 0-calorie sweeteners. And those things just aren't good for your body long term. Again, it's okay to have them occasionally, but if that's your main source of food, it's time to relook at your diet. And I have told people this before, and they come back saying, well, I don't really care because I just want to lose weight. So they don't care how they lose weight, which I get it because I did the same thing years ago. But if that is your frame of mind, I really, really encourage you to relook at that and talk it through with someone who can actually give you the education and the tools to help you, because that's not a healthy way of thinking. Your body is so important. It's what gets you through every day. And it's not respectful to your body to not give it what it needs just because you want to look a certain way. I know how hard it is to lose weight and be uncomfortable in your own body. And again, I've been there where I will do anything to lose weight, and I've cared more about aesthetics than I did about health. But it's time to rebuild a healthy relationship with your body and take care of it and treat it how it deserves to be treated. And eating healthy can be so much easier than you think it is. I've done an episode on this before, but the first thing I think you should look at is how food makes you feel afterward. I did an elimination diet once to, at the time it was to lose weight, but what I didn't realize was how much those foods were actually affecting me, and I had no idea. I used to go to bed every night with a horrible stomach ache, feeling so sick, feeling like I'm going to throw up. My stomach would be so bloated, I would look pregnant. And I just thought that was normal, but that is not normal. And it was because of the foods I was consuming. My skin was also really bad at the time. And through that elimination diet, I found out I am sensitive to gluten, dairy, and peanuts. Peanuts were actually huge for me. I used to love peanut butter, but it turns out that peanuts make me really sick. I get really bloated and I just feel awful after eating it, which actually ended up being lucky since Paul is allergic to peanuts and I can't have them anyways. So we both can't have them, but I never would have known that had I not cut it out. So I cut out those things and then I slowly reintroduced them one at a time to see how my body felt. And I know from experience, from years of figuring this stuff out, I'm sensitive to gluten, dairy, and peanuts, so I avoid them 90% of the time. If I'm going out to eat at a restaurant or if I'm going to a friend's for dinner, I don't eat dairy and gluten free when I do that. I still typically eat peanut free, but I still eat gluten and dairy if I'm going out just to make it a little bit easier. And I love dairy sometimes. I love ice cream, but I do eat 90% of the time, I eat in the way that makes my body feel the best. So focus on how your body feels. If that means tracking in a diary what foods you ate and then maybe 20 minutes later writing down how your body feels, you can kind of figure it out that way as well. There's a couple ways to do it. You don't necessarily have to do an elimination diet, but just really focusing on how your body feels after you eat that food. It's also really important to focus on protein, fiber, and I always say not to cut things out that aren't necessary. So I know a lot of people cut out carbs altogether or fat. And I just really hate that because carbs, protein, and fats are so important for your body. And it's important to have a balance of those and making sure you're eating the right amounts. But cutting out a macronutrient as a whole is not a good idea. Carbs are actually really important for your body's energy, and it's what fuels you. I actually encourage my athletes to eat carbs at their snack time because it gives them energy. And I always encourage them to have healthy carbs. There's a difference between healthy carbs and not healthy carbs. So I think it's just about learning the difference between them, but not cutting out something entirely unless it's something that clearly makes your body not feel good, like for me, gluten, dairy, and peanuts. And again, like I mentioned, looking at ingredient quality is really important as well. So looking at the ingredient list on your food, see what's actually in there. There's been so many times where I've looked at a box of something and the list is so long and there's so many weird scientific names for things, and it's just not necessary. The healthiest foods will have very minimal ingredients, and they're going to be ingredients that you know what they are. One simple rule you can follow is asking yourself, does this food support my energy, mood, and fullness? So, do you feel satisfied after eating it? And do you feel full? Do you feel like you have to eat something after, or do you feel satisfied? Do you feel like that food gave you energy? Do you feel tired after eating it, or do you feel like you actually have energy? And how is it affecting your mood? Do you feel content after? Are you in a good mood? Or are you feeling sluggish and tired? You don't need to fear food or obsess over the numbers. The goal is to understand your body, not control it. Whether you want to track calories, that is something that I will be starting with 75 Hard, and I've done many times before. Whether you want to track them or whether you want to eat intuitively and just focus on how food makes you feel, and maybe just educate yourself more on nutrition labels. Whatever it is, I'm here to support you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. I can always do another episode about this and kind of dive deeper into nutrition labels or healthy versus unhealthy carbs or whatever it may be. So definitely ask me any questions you have. You can DM me on Instagram at growthroughit.pod, or there's a link in the show notes where you can anonymously ask a question if you don't want me to know who you are. And I'd be happy to answer them on the podcast, or I can DM you back. I would also love to know what food that you thought was healthy that surprised you when you learned more about it. So, again, you can DM me on Instagram or you can comment on the podcast. And yeah, I would just love to hear it and see what foods people thought were healthy that ended up not being healthy, because I've just seen so many videos on TikTok and Instagram that are really misleading, and there's just a lot of misconceptions on what healthy food actually is. So I encourage you to get curious about the foods you're eating and look more into the ingredients and the nutrition label on your food. That is it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me them. If you enjoy this podcast, I would be so grateful if you left a rating or review and follow or subscribe and share it with someone you think would benefit from it. Thank you guys so much for listening, and remember that you are worthy. See you next time.